Hi, everybody. My name is Matt. I have a YouTube channel, which is on YouTube, and that's on the internet if you ever want to check it out. One of the big premises of the channel is the world around people is not very real. Your whole reality, life itself, as it's presented here while you're inside this body, it's not very real. I think fish born into a fish tank are less fooled than the average human being. Fish in a fish tank who have only known their 55 gallons, who look to that heating element that hangs down in glass as the sun, the great waterfall in the sky, the great ruins of the chest with the skeleton and the bubbles that have always existed in their reality, like the Great Pyramid exists here. So if you're going to say a reality system isn't very real, one of the ways, if you're going to make a claim like that, you better be able to make fun of it. And that's what I'm going to do here. I'm not going to start small. I'm not going to start with news items because news items are completely believable. They're easy to manipulate. They're easy to present. You can't make fun of small news items here in this reality system. Like, you know, when you see a C-130 or Hercules plane take off and a bunch of people clinging to it and just grabbing onto it, and there's, and then little specks fall off later to their death. There's no way to make fun of that. It's because it's just the presentation is too good at the lower levels. You have to target the higher levels. When there's been like 400 or 500 mass postal events, and every single person that's been interviewed after any of those postal events, not one of them going back 20 years has ever shed a tear for the horror that they saw or never showed any PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder. And I've seen people on camera that lost their entire families, and they don't seem to be bothered by it. Like they're just looking, they're trying to find out if the diner is still serving breakfast. So there's no way to make fun of that sort of stuff in this reality system. You have to go all the way to the top. And to go all the way to the top, you have to look to the reality system's laws and rules and axioms and theories that are untouchable, like incredible theories that give you chills. They're so incredibly well laid down, like Darwin's theory of evolution that can't ever drop the word theory. You have to go there to make fun of the reality system. You have to start at the top, because if it is as comical as someone like me says it is, like the whole reality system is a gigantic joke, then its greatest laws, its gods to the scientific community, they're not going to hold up either. So I started looking into the biggest golden calves of the scientific community, the gods of Neil deGrasse Tyson. And if we ever got a chance to debate, somebody like Neil deGrasse Tyson or Miku Pikachu or Brian Koch or one of these people at the other podium, there's nothing there. I mean, in terms of common sense, they have all the facts in their textbooks. They would lay out 15 or 20 textbooks. But in terms of common sense, it all breaks down. The whole reality system breaks down. If it was Neil deGrasse Tyson, he probably would run home crying all the way to the Krispy Kreme if we were ever to get a chance to debate one of these people. But they'll never put their necks on that chopping block. So like I said, this reality system has a bunch of dumb axioms and dumb theories and laws, and all of them worshipped like golden gods by the scientific and academic community of eggheads. Now, none of them is more blatantly wrong than the second law of thermodynamics. That's right, the second law of thermodynamics. I figured we'd start small if you want to make fun of a reality system. At least the first law of thermodynamics makes a little bit of sense. The second law is a freaking joke. Now, this second law, which is like their second temple, says that everything in the universe over time moves naturally towards a state of entropy. Entropy is a word for disorder, increased chaos over time. Well, what the hell's wrong with the second law, you goddamn moron? It holds up. Well, in most things, you're right, sir. Sir that just called out in the fifth row, sit down, shut up, or we'll have you removed. You're right. In most things, it does hold up. In most things, the arrow does move in that direction that the second law would predict towards entropy, chaos, and disorder. For example, if you drop a glass on the floor, it will shatter. Now, you could sit there and observe the glass for 1 billion years, watching it in the wind and watching it through all sorts of natural conditions. And that glass will not reform the way it originally was. You're right, sir, in the fifth row, but don't ever call out again. It does generally hold up. Only a specific and directed force can reform the glass. Like if Phil Swift swooped in with gigantic tubes of Flex Seal. Okay, the key here is to understand the entire second law of thermodynamics revolves around one word, entropy. There's a lot more to it, but it all comes back in entropy. To the second law, entropy is what Jack and Rose is to the Titanic movie. Okay, you got it. One more example before we move on. Say a kid graduates high school in 1980. If he graduated at about that time, he'd only be 5 out of 10 on the stupid meter. A kid who graduates today, after Common Core, fluoride, and having spent their entire lives buried in a Samsung Galaxy, that kid is 9 out of 10 on the stupid meter. So this is entropy. In this case, stupid represents chaos and disorder. It's a major principle of the second law of thermodynamics. I'm sorry, I must pause for a moment to insert New York State compliance requirements regarding any video that uses the potentially offensive terms of he, she, guy, or gal, which does come up in the next section. In order for this video to be viewed or seen in New York State, it must be noted that the words he, she, guy, or gal is in no way meant to be discriminatory or non-inclusive, and New York State provides a litany of other pronouns that can be used in its place. So regarding the second law and first law of thermodynamics, if you approach any guy or gal on the street and you ask them, who came up with this stuff, second law of thermodynamics, almost everybody says Albert Einstein. I think everybody attributes basically everything to Albert Einstein. The guy or gal or Z or P on the street. Everything's. If you ask who invented a mousetrap, people will say Albert Einstein. But basically the roots of the second and first law go back quite a ways. Not as far as the second and first temple, but they go back quite a ways before Albert Einstein. Like, who is this Albert Einstein that gets credit for just about everything, right? I mean, is he the genius that this reality system presents? Nobody's smarter, his bust and pedestal put on high, or is he some sort of front man? Is he a William Shakespeare type front man? Like, who knows, right? I mean, but you have, it's always, his genius is carried through time artificially. I saw A Beautiful Mind not too long ago, and you have John Nash running around begging the dean of the math college to, please, sir, if I could have just one more meeting with Professor Einstein in Princeton, if I could have just one more meeting with, it's always, and this Professor Einstein never shows up. He's just this figure, and his genius just lurks in the background of Princeton. Like, who is this? Who is this guy? When I went to Penn State, they pushed his posters. People had various posters of Albert Einstein on the wall, one of which was him sticking out his tongue. Have you ever seen that one? With Albert Einstein sticking out his tongue? That horrible poster was big when I went to Penn State. And the other thing that was big was these Che Guevara T-shirts. I bet not even one kid out of 10 knew whose head that was on the front of their chest. Not one kid out of 10 that bought the damn T-shirt knew a damn thing about Che. I remember almost buying it myself at a local T-shirt shop. I don't know, that black head kind of looked cool. I was no better than these other zombies when I went to Penn State. Maybe I'm no better now, but you know what I mean? We're trying, right? None of us could have told you anything about Che. We couldn't have told you if he was a Cuban revolutionist, whatever, or he was some guy that sold wholesale products to taco carts. Anyway, the guy down the hall in the dorm who thought he was so smart, he was in all the advanced placement programs and whatever, he had the picture of Einstein with the tongue. And I looked at it several times. It's just disgusting. It's really gross, that picture. I mean, could you imagine, like, if you're some sophomore, have some woman in your room for the first time, you're trying to get it on for the first time, some freshman or sophomore in the dorms, and you look up and you see that poster. I mean, actually, it could be of use if you actually start the act. You could use that poster to last. Sorry, let's get back on track. According to the scientific eggheads, the number one example of entropy in all of existence is the Big Bang. No more chaos or entropy is possible in this universe than the Big Bang, if you believe in that sort of nonsense like the Big Bang, but we'll let it go for now. Just let's go with it. So the Big Bang is a 10 out of 10 on the entropy meter. It's a 10 out of 10 on the chaos meter, of course, if you believe in that sort of thing, but we'll let that go. It scores higher marks than the Chinese Olympians do in synchronized diving, who actually are trying to fight entropy because they're trying to do synchronization and unison in their moves. By the way, another sidebar. Have you seen the Chinese synchronized divers and how perfect they are? It's unnatural. It's amazing how synchronized. They go in no splash. It's almost like they're brothers from the same mother, not another mother. I think they're robots. I think they could actually be robots, just like Johnny Depp. Today's Johnny Depp is likely a clone. The whatever Johnny Depp was, it died shortly after Pirates of the Caribbean. I think they're robots. I don't think they could actually use robots probably until Rio, because after the dive, they just sink to the bottom and they couldn't get up off the bottom because their bodies were like lead. But that's why they're like robots, and there's nothing natural or human about the Chinese diving team. Sorry to stray. Okay, regarding entropy, the Big Bang scores the highest of marks. Of course, according to the second law, further entropy must always ensue in a natural system unless acted upon specifically by a directed force. So here's a little problem for the scientists. How do you account for this little thing off to the side? It's no big deal or anything, but how do you account for this thing called life itself? Have you ever thought how that fits in to the second law of thermodynamics, where everything must go towards further and further entropy? Well, how do you go further and further toward entropy, chaos, and disorder if the ultimate or the origin moment of the universe is considered the highest level of chaos, entropy, and disorder? And then out of that, if it's supposed to get worse, it's not supposed to get better after that, according to the second law. It's supposed to get worse. How do you account for a little thing? That's no big deal. Life itself? Regarding the origins of life, the eggheads tell us that billions of years ago, some shit combined with some other shit in just the right way. And then eventually that led to sentient life, which I call liphogenesis. But you see, that's not possible under the second law of thermodynamics. The second law's golden calf is entropy, right? I'm sorry to be repetitive, but this is kind of important. It's not some little axiom at the bottom of a textbook in 8th grade. It's the second law of thermodynamics. You see, primordial Earth didn't come with ready-made packets to create life in 3 easy steps, like growing sea monkeys. Remember the sea monkeys you get on the boardwalk? It was yeast. Just a little newsflash to you people. You weren't creating life. It was yeast. So which is it, you scientific eggheads? Does everything per your second temple move towards entropy or not? Which is it? Pick one. You can't have it both ways. You can't have your Stephen Hawking poster and eat it too. What directed force then acted on this ultimate chaos and formed life? Could it be God? Could it be God? We all know the scientific community can't possibly go there. The word God, it just doesn't fit right with them. To them, God, the word God, whoever or whatever you consider it to be, to the scientific community, it's like the opposite of the safe word. Remember the safe word from Eurotrip, where the kid was pinned upside down and they bring out the flugel? You know, they can never go there. They would sooner believe that the opening scene in Prometheus is correct, where some white alien came. Very discriminatory, by the way they put that alien together. Prometheus could never happen today. He threw himself into a pond or whatever. That apparently spread the DNA all over, and that's what created you and me. They'd sooner go there than to use the opposite of the safe word. I'm sorry, scientists. As we look into them with a little bit of common sense, your golden calves, your baseline laws are just downright dumb. Here's an example where people can get too caught up in the box thinking, the toy box thinking of science and academia's golden calves, like the second law, and the ability to get trapped in it and not think outside of it. Maybe that's the point of these dumb laws. So remember in the movie, I don't know what Superman remake it was, there's like hundreds of them, the Man of Steel, I think it's called, but you remember the scene? There's that hillbilly truck driver. He pours soup or something over the head of Superman. Superman's working as a busboy in like Mel's Diner or something. It's like a remake. Wasn't there a similar scene? Now, Christopher Reeves, I think when he got beat up at that diner, he had given away his powers, or he had given his powers back, so it's a little bit different. So, of course, he's working as a busboy. Wasn't there anywhere else in town where Superman should be working where he could actually make use of his talents, like a loading dock or something? But anyway, he's a busboy. This hillbilly hick truck driver pours soup all over him, and of course, Superman turns the other cheek, and he walks out of the place to avoid a fight. But, unlike the friendly Christopher Reeves version of Superman, this Superman is capable of getting pissed off. And later, we see the hillbilly pay his bill, whatever. He goes outside to get into his Peterbilt big rig 18-wheeler truck, and Superman has, suspended it up in the air. He didn't beat the guy up, punch his head through 17 walls. He turned the other cheeks. He went outside and he messed with his car. Remember what did Vincent say in Pulp Fiction? It's like, there's nothing more chicken shit than messing with a man's car. I think Vincent said something like, it'd be worth him doing it just for me catching him doing it. And that's what Superman did. He messed with the man's car, but he suspended the big rig up with like telephone poles up in the air. All right, but that's not the point. Ran full-size telephone poles through the damn big rig. So, boy, did that truck driver Hick get a surprise when after he paid Alice and Flo for breakfast, he walked out in the parking lot and saw his truck up in the air. Okay, so what happened next? You know, we're gonna guess here because we don't know. The movie went back to some bad scene where Russell Crowe's trying to come back and play Jor-El. It says some hologram, which you could cut out all those scenes and the movie would be better. But let's say the truck driver walks back into the diner, and in his amazement, he shows the people in the diner what happened to his truck. So the people of the diner come outside, and they look up at the truck in wonder. Again, if you haven't seen the movie, it's a big rig suspended up in the air with telephone poles. Like, how'd that happen, right? So after they conferred, the people in the diner, and they're like, what happened here? You know, they only come up with two options. Some guy with a John Deere hat steps forward. He's going to tell everybody what happened. He's going to apply the second law of thermodynamics. And he's going to say, everybody here, you have to understand something. I had 3 years of high school science. The universe always moves towards entropy. And, you know, they're yelling at him because he didn't tip Vera. He just walked outside to see the truck. I'll tip you in a second, Vera. So, see, the universe moves towards entropy. There must have been a tornado here in the parking lot. Nobody noticed it. Nobody heard it. But there's no other explanation. He wouldn't be talking like that. He was like, there must have been a tornado here in the parking lot. Nobody noticed it. Nobody heard it. But there ain't no other explanation. There must have been a tornado. It didn't harm none of the other cars neither. So if you're a box-thinking Einstein fanboy, this would be the only option because you would have no ability to come up with what might have happened outside of your toy box. However, a guy with a cat hat, not cat in the hat, or caterpillar. You know, the hillbillies wear those mesh hats. It says CAT. The guy with the cat hats, well, which one, right? Half the diner would probably be wearing that same hat. He steps forward and says, no, wait a second here. No. You don't always have to fall back on these scientific laws. You know, think outside the box. Something else must have happened here. Something we can't quite imagine right now. There was no tornado that came and just affected this one truck. Flo screams down from Mel's kitchen, well, tell us what happened then, Sam, and kiss my grits. Okay, Flo, relax. I'm going to tell you what happened here. There's no other explanation. There must be some sort of super being among us, some sort of superhuman with a level of strength to do this that makes Hercules look like Urkel. Who? Says Alice. Urkel. You know, Steve Urkel? No. Steve Urkel. Everybody knows that nerd. Remember that nerd that was on TV like 30 years ago? No. Oh, okay, fine. It doesn't matter for my analogy, okay? If you don't like Urkel, say this super being that did this to the truck would make Hercules look like Webster. Who the hell's Webster? Barks Flo. It doesn't matter for the purpose of this analogy, whether you don't know who Urkel is or Webster. Just some wimpy kid. Pick anyone. Put in Gary Coleman, whoever you want. Does your analogy require a black kid? Screams Mel from his kitchen. No, it doesn't require a black kid. It's just an analogy. Just everybody that works here, Flo, Vera, Alice, Mel, shut up. Look up at that truck. You got to go outside the box here, people. You got to throw away the scientific laws and your second law. There was no tornado that touched down here. Look at it. You got to think outside the bookends. Well, why would any super being do that to a truck? I don't know. I don't have all the answers. Maybe it just likes to fuck with trucks as a sick form of entertainment. For 5 seconds, there was dead silence in the parking lot of that diner before the entire crowd, in unison, turned, pointed, and laughed at that man in the cat hat. Even Mel ran out from behind his pancake griddle to mock the poor man. This man dared to think outside the box, and as usual, the zombies couldn't accept it. They'll mock anyone who goes off script. The patrons of Alice's diner, it's Mel's diner, they will always, just as the masses, choose Barabbas. I think there are incredible lessons in the Bible, but I don't take too much of it literally. I don't think there really was a David that threw a stone and hit Goliath in the head. That's a lesson. I don't think the crowd really chose Barabbas. I think this is a metaphor for what a crowd, a spiritually degraded crowd, what they will do, the choices they will make. They'll choose the bandit and the thief and the murderer. To me, it's symbolic. I know, this is a touchy subject because we're talking about literally hours or so before the crucifixion, but to me, it's more of a statement as to what the masses that have no spiritual direction, the choices they will make. And by the way, don't get too caught up if you disagree with me on that. Like if you make a big presentation, you're probably going to say a few things that piss people off if you go into these areas. Just give me a pass every once in a while. So, but think about this. How many people talk about this? Whatever happened to Barabbas? There's by good word and account, he went on to basically take the assumed name Dennis Kozlowski and run Tycho and put it by $6,000 shower curtains. He probably went on through his multiple sequential incarnations to basically probably be in the Bush family and run several corporations. Anybody ever been to Carrabba's Italian Grill? Carrabba's? That's Barabbas. That's how they do things. It's subtle. You can, once you start noticing, read the Matrix Code, you say, oh, that's the sequential incarnation of Barabbas, running Carrabba's. And he's run other corrupt corporations as well. So I'm going out on a limb, I guess, but I don't think the second law of thermodynamics works if it ignores the most important thing in the universe, life itself, creation itself. If it ignores that, there's kind of a problem with it, wouldn't you say? And it's not just one little problem, all right? If it was just one life form that bucked the trend and one little life form was created in a 1 in 100 trillion situation that went against the second law and it just kicked entropy in the balls and it became a life form, okay, then maybe, there's an exception to every rule. But there's like 100 million species of plants and animal life here on Earth that all did it, all went against the second law. And if any dummies yelling out at me now or rising up out of their bathtub, everything here evolved from the same thing initially, oh, I'll get to your dumb ass in a minute. Back to what I was saying, if you want to have the second law hold, then there'd be like one life form that just got lucky, and was able to buck the trend of the second law of thermodynamics. It'd be a one-off fluke, all right? It would only happen once every trillion years, if it could happen at all, okay? But just the opposite happened. It happened like hundreds of millions of times over. So again, last way of saying this is very important. So if you want to stick to your second law, so like every 10 billion years, life was formed and just one little thing got lucky. One pathetic thing got lucky and became alive on a planet of acid rain, primordial Earth. Again, this is happening all the time. So that's kind of your main problem here, you eggheads. There's more plants and animal species and genuses on this Earth than Rolling Stones have comeback tours. If the second law was worth more than a squirt of piss to the most important topic of all time, life, then again, one final time, there'd be just one little lucky one-off. Some blob-like thing will have at some point bucked the trend of the second law and everything going towards entropy, and it would become alive. It wouldn't be special. It would be alive, and it would be like a blob, right? Do you understand what I'm saying here? It wouldn't be an amazing form of life like an ostrich or a cheetah that can run 60 miles an hour. It would be like a blob. It would be like that thing that Chet was turned into by Lisa in Weird Science. It would be like that famous saying in Clerks to a degree. He says, I shouldn't even be here. Well, it shouldn't even be here per the second law of thermodynamics. So it's just going to be like this blob type thing that lies in a pile of goo in a muddy pond somewhere that somehow found a way to respirate and somehow found a way to use the sun as energy, just laying there. It wouldn't be special. It got lucky, right? If anything could buck the second law of thermodynamics, it would be lucky. It would just be laying there soaking up the sun like Sheryl Crow. It would never experience no PlayStation. But what do we have? in every single case, according to how the Darwinian tree unfolds, if you want to believe in that sort of thing. But, they believe in that, and then they believe in the second law. They're conflicting with each other. That's the point. In every single case, a simple organism over time became more complex. The second law is defiled over and over again in this reality system. Defiled, like Ravenclaw's lost item. Tom Riddle, he defiled it with dark magic. The second law is defiled every single case. It's a simple moved to make itself more complex, right? Billions and billions of times. If all we had was a blob life form here on Earth, something that got lucky, I don't know, I'll give it to you. The second law then would still hold. Fine. Something got lucky. But we have more than a blob, all right? An octopus, think of all the wondrous types of life. An octopus can change its color in less than a half a second. Its color completely become a completely different pattern or color in less than a half a second. How does an organism natural select, quote, Darwin, into something that wondrous? How does the dice of evolution produce a lightning bug? Now, I don't know how far these lightning bugs go out past Pennsylvania here. I've seen them in Pennsylvania here where I grow up. Pennsylvania. In Philly, we say Pennsylvania. It's P-E-N-N-S-A, Vana, Pennsylvania. But, I don't know. Much of the world maybe doesn't know what I'm talking about regarding lightning bugs. I don't know if they're in Australia or what. But this bug here, it can light up its ass every few seconds. I'm not talking a little tiny. I'm talking light up its ass. Bright. Not where you could tape it to the end of a piece of wood and make it a torch, but it is bright. It's basically a light. All right? I'd like to see how Darwin would explain how that could happen. At what point in the evolutionary history could the baby bug find out it could light up its ass, but its mother could not? There's nothing that's ever been born that has been different from its mother, except like little Jack in The Incredibles. But that's a cartoon. Nothing is ever different than its mother. See how that works? Nothing's ever been born species A, and by the time it died, has become species B. That's also a tiny little problem for Darwin. It's never happened. Okay? The only thing that's happened, if you want to talk about that sort of transformation in a very general sense, is kids becoming more dumb or dumber than their mother. But that's not exactly the genetic mutation we're talking about here. Eggheads, you can't have it both ways. You can't be a Darwin fanboy and then put all your stock into the second law of thermodynamics. They're at odds with each other. And you're going to try to scrape and scrap and try to put me into a corner and look at the etymology of the word perhaps and say, well, that doesn't apply to life itself, Matt. It's a law of thermodynamics. We use it to build rockets. Nobody said, oh, really? No, it wouldn't apply to life itself. You're going to use the etymology of the word like thermodynamics, heat. The second law, eggheads, the second law is not a law about grilling. It's a general law of the universe. The formation of life probably fits into a general law of how the universe works. It's not about Weber grills or Webster grills. The formation of life would include heat exchange and flow, just as a calorie is an essential element to live. That's a measure of heat. Of course, you can't take life and pull it out of what the second law of thermodynamics is trying to say. Talk about cherry picking. You can't have it both ways. You can't hang your Heather Thomas poster on the wall and your Lorenzo Lamas poster on the other wall and covet both. It doesn't make sense. You choose one or the other. Well, I guess today you can covet both. A chicken somewhere in the back alleyways of Hong Kong has learned to play tic-tac-toe. A chicken. It's not just some lucky life form when it's just one of millions and millions or billions of other wondrous forms of life that kick the second law of thermodynamics in the balls. Now, unlike the chicken, all these forms of life, they don't all play tic-tac-toe, but each one has its own gifts. Each one is special. A koi fish can actually be petted like a dog, and it greets its owner. I'm not joking. There's a lot of jokes in this presentation. People have actually pet their koi fish. Some of them live to be like 60 or 80 years old. I'm not joking about that. They're each wondrous in their own way. It's not a blob laying in a muddy pool on an acid rain planet. That's the only thing the second law of thermodynamics would allow. Part 2, E equals mc squared. I think that's stupid too. Yeah, I'm going after the big one. E equals mc squared. Not in the same way. I'm not saying it's wrong or anything like that. It's right. It's right. But they don't look at it in the right way. These eggheads don't see it in the right light, the way I think many of us would see it. So I'm going after the big one. I don't care if it's proven. I don't care if it actually works. I don't care if these dummies have used it, which of course they have. They've used it to do all sorts of dumb stuff. NASA used it to put Neil Armstrong in front of a camera in a desert somewhere to pass that off. Doritos used it to create another carcinogenic ingredient for real pico de gallo flavor. They use it, okay? Of course it's used. It's used to create more technology in this reality system that ends up destroying a human being's spiritual ties, but that's not the purpose of this video. So E equals mc squared works, and to you, it's a scientific blessing. Not to you listening, but to the eggheads at Cambridge and Oxford and Harvard and Yale, which I'm addressing. It's a scientific blessing. So regarding E equals mc squared, then, what are the eggheads, what's Einstein missing? Anything works, and it's really important to evolve science so eventually human beings can put their consciousness into a computer chip. So the point is they're totally missing the boat on what it says about reality itself. So, in my opinion, the first thing that Einstein should have done the moment he came up with it, whatever, just like I guess Shakespeare came up with to be or not to be, the moment he came up with it and wasn't used as a frontman to come up with it in 1905, whoever it was or whatever it was, it doesn't matter. In 1905, the moment Einstein realized that E equals mc squared is basically the key to the universe, energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. You know, that's it. The conversion between energy and mass is just a simple little equation. He should have ran out into the streets of Bern or Vienna or wherever he was, whatever he's doing his internship. He should have screamed at the top of his smoke-filled lungs, "This place we live in ain't real." What? This place we live in ain't real. It should have been used to determine if it is correct, and it is, and it's that simple, the place we live in isn't very real. He should have ran out and screamed at the top of his smoke-filled lungs. Some guy from across the street in Vienna or Bern or wherever he was opened up his window. Little people don't know about this. Opened up his window and he screamed out, "Shut up, Einstein! We're trying to sleep up in here! Don't make me come down there and give you another beating!" Now, Einstein, very little known fact, was so afraid of this neighbor that he moved across the Atlantic to get away from him, moved to Princeton, New Jersey. Fine, Einstein came up with E equals mc squared, used it for all the wrong reasons, so it immediately started to be used to create an atomic weapon. Oh, that's nice. That's wonderful job. Wonderful job, Albert. He should have used it to say this place couldn't be real if the key to the universe is this ridiculously simple equation. Others got a clue, like what is it, the Einstein-Bohr debates or Einstein-Bohr's debates? Neil Bohr's or something was he's arguing more on the quantum physics side that like nothing's real unless observed, requires consciousness, requires the observer. Einstein, all his geniuses, he's trying to argue the other side that everything is completely real, and when you drop a brick on your foot, that's completely real. Einstein, fine, he came up with it. He served the system, helped create all their horrible, spirit-destroying inventions and technology. He didn't use it for what it should have been used for, of course. I got to do a quick sidebar. This is too funny, too appropriate to what I was emailing back and forth with someone the other day. Someone proposed, Matt, have you noticed that when you go to search something that's kind of important, something that happened in history, like the absurd idiocracy examples will come first in the search results, whether that's Google feeding you the idiocracy or it's actually people becoming so dumb that they're actually searching for the idiocracy that sounds like or is very similar to a search result of something important. It just happened with Einstein. I'll tell you about it in a second, but this is too appropriate to what we were emailing back. Basically, what he was saying was, bad example, but like when you go to search Leaning Tower of Pisa and you get one little thing spelled wrong, the search results will give you Leaning Tower of Pizza, for example, if in a elementary school in Ohio just created a gigantic tower of pizza. So you get the idiocracy Google search result first before anything that, is considered important. Or I'm not really saying it, but I'll just give you the example that just happened to me. So I was like, what was this guy, the Einstein Bohr debates or Bohr's debates. I always forget this guy's name who took the side of quantum physics in the Einstein debates. So I don't know how I put it in. I got a couple of the letters wrong. I didn't spell Bohr right, or Bohr's, Niels Bohr's Albert Einstein debates on quantum physics. The first search result was for Einstein Brothers Bagels, and it didn't even incorporate debate. So you want to talk about dumbing down search results into this is the second law of thermodynamics, everything going towards chaos and entropy. I'm searching for some of the most significant moments in scientific history: Einstein Bohr's debates, the merits of quantum physics, if nothing is real until observed, and it returned to me Einstein Brothers Bagels and some sort of story related to a debate or something. Okay, there is no better example than what just happened to me. What these scientists, what did that guy from Contact? These scientists here in Jodie Foster, these scientists should have noticed that it's beyond absurd that the wonder of the universe is magically contained in a simple little math equation for second graders. It's not this gigantic chalkboard. Remember where that horrible actor who played in the last Time Machine movie, whatever his name is, who was in The Count of Monte Cristo? I can't stand him more than almost anybody else. I'd rather watch Matt Damon than that guy, no question about it. But the gigantic chalkboard of equations to create his time machine, and you'd think it would be like that, right? The key to unlocking it's just a retarded, dumbed down E equals MC squared. That's not possible. In a real world, the key to the universe is E equals MC squared. Really? The world constantly gives itself away in this manner, and the eggheads don't notice it. They keep applying all their new technology and all their wondrous math and science skills into proving the world is more and more real because they're serving the master reality. The master reality, it needs everybody believing in it. It needs everybody thinking it's absolutely real. It needs conscious, creative spirits putting stock into it and believing it and breathing life into it. Jack Nicholson. You need me on that wall. You want me on that wall. It needs everybody believing in it. That's why Einstein will never, a servant of this system, will never run out and say, "Look at this. There's no real world this could be the mystery of the universe." That's never ever, mentioned. I guarantee it's never mentioned. And I don't know this Nick Bostrom is saying the world is a simulation. That's all the crap, the people that propose that, and all the Neil deGrasse Tyson alkalites that propose the world is a simulation. They want you believing it's some sort of technology. It still can be a simulation, a more natural simulation. They know people will notice that the world can't possibly be real, and they always what they want you thinking about it then is breathing life into literally like a Matrix machine world type thing to make the technology responsible for it. I'm not saying the same thing that Neil deGrasse Tyson's panel and the guy says, we found computer code at the quantum level. I'm not saying the same thing as Elon Musk. They want to lead you down towards technology explaining the simulation, like a video game, where it's a simulation, but a more, you could say, natural, that's not chip or technology related. It's simply we just don't understand it. So the equation itself is so second grade, it's just not possible that that's the wonder of the universe. And it is the wonder of the universe, so the universe gives itself away. This isn't very real. Look, talk about a simulated construct. E equals MC squared? It's a joke. If you were playing a Sims game and you picked a scientist as your sim, and he got all this Nobel Prize and all this stuff because he created some E equals MC squared, some three-letter equation, you'd return the Sims game to GameStop. You get your money back. It wouldn't be believable, even in the Sims game. But here it's believable. Then the key that unlocks the whole universe in one equation should probably look a little complicated. It should be at least something like, what was on that blackboard in Good Will Hunting, connecting those dots and that Harvard chalkboard or whatever, connecting those dots. Nobody knew what the fuck he was doing. It should be more like that. Marky, Ricky, Danny, Terry, Davey, Timmy, Johnny, Joey, Robbie, Johnny, Brian, his brothers list is more believable. is Marky, Ricky, Danny, Terry, Timmy, Tommy, Johnny, Joey, Robbie, Johnny, and Brian. It's more believable than equals MC squared. And he was using that to get in that girl's pants. Like kids write letters to Santa Claus. And here's a letter that some kid in Duluth wrote the universe. It says, "Dear universe, it was so nice of you, the universe, to make it so simple for all of us to understand. Just think, the wonders of the universe in E equals mc squared, something even a second grader like me can understand. The wonders of the Big Bang, star systems that take 400 billion lifetimes to travel to in a TIE fighter, the fabric of all the wonders of creation revealed in 3 letters of the alphabet with a number 2. Since the theme of this YouTube series is basically fight absurdity with absurdity, I have my own absurd example as to what potentially really went on with E equals mc squared. And it should be just as believable as what science presents to us. Okay? I got news for you, and I'll present it right here coming up. Einstein did not come up with E equals mc squared on his own. He didn't come up with it at all. He stole it, basically. Einstein didn't come up with E equals mc squared. It's not in any way an original thought. As I said, E equals mc squared is real, but Einstein is a scientific Milli Vanilli. He's a scientific Milli Vanilli. Here's the real story. In the year 1720, there was a man who lived in Sandwich, England. His name was Eddie Michael Cartwright. At the local brothel, Miss Bell reserved his appointment time with Trudy just with his initials, EMC. Eddie, a peasant from Sandwich, shoveled shit for a living, working in the stables of an earl. Now, this earl had a lot of animals that needed to be attended to. He was a fat, rich bastard of an earl. Each day, Eddie was assigned to the stables by the director of peasants, who used a rudimentary blackboard to divide up the day's work duties. The board on this day noted that Bob Cratchit had just left and that they'll be short-handed. Eddie saw his initials EMC over the square representing the East Stables. "Hooray!" Eddie said to himself, for this was Eddie's favorite place to shovel shit on the entire grounds. Now, this director of peasants who assigned work duties wasn't an educated man. This is where this is going. He cleaned toilets at St. Andrews University for about 2 years in Scotland, but he never attended any classes other than pretending to be sweeping up just outside the lecture hall so he could listen in on things. Although he learned much lurking outside the open doors of classrooms, listening to professors teach the grandsons and sons of noblemen how to defraud people in business, he never learned to write. And that, coincidentally, is what led to the incredible breakthrough. The director of peasants never learned to write. This means he drew his C's from the bottom to the top, just like those in England who lack a royal bloodline don't know how to use a fork correctly today. When he assigned Eddie the East Stable that fateful day, something incredible happened that would forever change the scientific world. Upon completing the letter C, the chalk slipped a bit, and it made a little squiggly character above the C that looked exactly like a 2. There was also a line of hardened donkey dung on the slate between the E and the MC that resembled an equal sign. And there it was, the key to the mysteries of the universe revealed, by mistake, hundreds of years before Einstein, via the assigning of shit-shoveling duties to a man named Eddie Michael Cartwright, or EMC. As I said, Einstein didn't come up with the equation. He acquired the chalkboard in a yard sale for 50 cents. It was a vintage chalkboard of pure slate, and he acquired it for 50 cents the way somebody acquires a Mona Lisa with a bunch of, pasted over the Mona Lisa's like watercolor, and the Mona Lisa's behind it, one of those type deals. So he didn't come up with it on his own. He's a front man. He's a scientific Milli Vanilli that should be removed from the history books. He essentially lip-synced his most famous equation. He stole the concept for himself, grabbing all the glory. The more we look into it, Einstein should be known, literally should be known as the Ringo Starr of the scientific community. According to Mike, Ringo Starr was so pathetic that he didn't even drum on most of the Beatles albums, or on the Beatles albums. They would bring in what's called a session drummer. They bring in some guy from New Orleans, pay him $50. He would drum on the White Album. And Ringo would drum in the concert, but in the concert with like 100,000 screaming fans, and nobody can hear anything. And John Lemon's probably lip syncing this guitar strings. Who knows who's playing what? They don't even probably have Ringo's drum plugged in. He's probably just beating on sand. It doesn't. Okay, he could do the concerts, but he was so pathetic that he didn't even, according to Mike, didn't even drum on the Beatles' own albums, and that's basically the equivalency of that. Could be from what we were finding out could be Albert Einstein in the scientific community. Guys, thanks for listening. Just think, if the main tenets of the reality system, the main golden calves that they have on high, like the laws of thermodynamics equals mc squared, we'd even get to gravity. You don't think you can make fun of that concept? When their most high tenets are this exposed to being made fun of, imagine what you can do with the little stuff, all the little stuff that presents itself on a daily basis, like people bum rushing the Kabul airport and clinging on to C-130 transport planes as it takes off. Imagine what you could do with the little stuff if you wanted to have a whole channel just about making fun or making fun of the reality. So truth community, stop taking it so seriously. I mean, that's what it wants. Fight absurdity with absurdity. Don't watch a Sky News video of people bum rushing an airport and people clinging to the side of landing gear as the C-130 is about to take off and then take off. Don't look at it literally. Make fun of it. Add your own comedic elements to it. Remember what happened when the first transport went out from the Hoth planet in Empire Strikes Back, the frozen planet. Remember? You've seen it. Come on, you remember. The first transport is away. The first transport is away. And then everybody went, yay! Remember, like, Han was trying to get Lee out. I'll get her out on the Falcon. Remember? Come on. The first well, just think of that exact same voice coming across the speaker, people hanging on to the landing gear. The first transport is away. And and as the C-130 takes off, think of Darth Vader coming out of hyperspace about to put walkers on the ground. This is what you want to really screw with reality. Manifest those images, and we'll be getting somewhere. Thanks, guys.